In this video, I want to give you guys a Brisbane property market update. We're going to have a chat about what's happening on the ground in the Brisbane market, because myself and the team at Purpose Property have been buying a lot of properties to close out 2024. We had a massive finish to the year. I'm expecting a big start to 2025 based on the groundswell and what's happening in the wider economy and what's happening here on the ground in Brisbane as well. My name's Luke and I talk all things real estate, renovating and financial freedom. Welcome back to the YouTube channel. If you could hit subscribe, that'd be awesome. And let's dive into this chat about Brisbane. Now, it's important to remember Brisbane is not a small country town anymore. The population, depending on Southeast Queensland or where you look at in terms of the Brisbane region, is somewhere in the vicinity of around 2.5 million people. And Brisbane is expected to grow by another million people over the next decade, or even less than that in the near future. So if we go from somewhere between 2.5 to upwards of around 3.5 million people out towards, say, 2030, 2035, that is a massive change for Brisbane in terms of population. And where are these people coming from? Are they coming from overseas and interstate? Well, the answer is both. The data shows us that there is net overseas migration into the Southeast Queensland market, and there's also interstate migration into the Southeast Queensland market. The Sunshine State is the place to be, and that's because we have jobs, infrastructure, we have beaches at the Sunshine Coast and the Gold Coast, lifestyle. Yes, it's quite hot up here, but people are wanting to move to Brisbane because it is far more affordable than a Sydney and a Melbourne in those other major capital cities. And so that's why Brisbane has had some strong growth the last few years. And I think the trajectory for Brisbane is quite strong over the next 3, 5, 7 years moving forward. So what is the data saying about the Brisbane market? Let's take a look at a graph which breaks down prices in Brisbane's bottom quartile and splits them into the bottom, middle, and top quartile in terms of price point. So on screen here, you can see this shows that prices in Brisbane's bottom quartile are 30% higher than the 2022 peak. So this basically maps out the percentage change across 2022, 2023, and 2024 and shows you those growth trajectories as a percentage for each of those price points. Depending on which data set or price point you look at, the median price for a house in Brisbane sits around $950,000. So if you're looking at these data sets and you're looking at bottom 25%, top 25%, and that middle 50%, looking at 950 or say close to $1 million, it's that 600 to 900K price point that's going to be the strongest in terms of price growth in the last 12 months. When you compare that to say the 900 to 1.4 or the $2 million plus range in that top quartile. So the affordable properties are seeing a run on price growth. And why might that be? Well, clearly, the easy answer to that is cost of living and affordability being a major issue. So Brisbane's cheap properties, anything that's 600 to 900K for a house, is in high demand. And we've certainly seen that in our business here at Purpose Property. Lots of clients are coming to us and asking for a $500,000 house, which you could get in Brisbane a few years ago, but they're just not out there anymore. If you're looking for an entry property here into the Brisbane market, I'm suggesting around that $700K price point, unless you're willing to look out towards Ipswich, where you can drop that down between, say, the $550 to $700K price point. You are competing with a lot of other buyers at sub $700,000 though. So you're competing with people who are first home buyers and other seasoned investors who may be limited on their serviceability and capacity. That's why I personally bought 2 properties in mid and late 2024, one in Moreton Bay and one in Logan City. And you can go back through the YouTube channel and watch those videos if you're interested. But the reason I bought those properties at their price points was where they were located and what price I could buy them for. So the first property was bought on the north side of Brisbane, and I did buy that below $700,000. But it was in an area where most of the other houses were selling for about $800,000. And so that is the Bray Park Bomb. That property I purchased for $640,000. Now the difference with that property is it needed a major renovation. So at least $75,000 to renovate the house. So that already puts it around $720K for the house. But then I was adding a granny flat for about $100,000. And I'll tell you about that in the future because I think the budget might blow out on that granny flat build. But the interesting thing is that that was bought with the end goal being around that 900K all in. And that's the house and the granny flat. Just the house by itself, after doing an 80K reno, would probably have sat around that 800K price point. So it would have doubled my money in terms of equity growth from the house renovation. The other property I bought late in 2024 was in Shayla Park. So that's on the south side of Brisbane in Logan City Council. And I purchased that property for $855,000. So Emily and I, when we sat down and talked about Shayla Park, it was about building for our financial future. Buying a property with a large parcel of land in a landlocked area, an established suburb that had drivable side access and the ability to add a granny flat. So if we go back to the graph that was on screen, both of those properties would sit in the bottom or middle quartile in terms of, or bottom or middle half, I should say, in terms of where those prices sat in the Brisbane or Southeast Queensland market. And so that's where I'm encouraging a lot of investors to buy, even our high net worth clients, buying properties between $700,000 and $1.2 million, rather than buying a $1.5 or $2 million home. Now, of course, you can argue, why wouldn't you buy the $2 million home? It's clearly a more scarce location and a more scarce asset. But the counter argument to that is you can spread yourself across more properties. You can buy more land potentially and more land value if you're buying between that 700K to 1.2 million price point. And it comes down to you as an investor. The right property for me, we bought one north and one south in 2024. And for every client, it's going to be different in terms of the right property to buy. And SQM Research is forecasting strong growth for Brisbane again in 2025. And I personally expect that to be in that lower middle quartile and less in that higher price point, because those higher price points are more aligned with Sydney and Melbourne. Now, it doesn't mean you can't make money in those higher price points, but I think the growth rates, the percentage growth rates, will make a difference there. Now, I've bought some expensive properties in my portfolio as well. I have two $2 million assets, my own home and a unit block in Coffs Harbour. The difference with those properties is you don't need as big a percentage growth. Say you get 5% growth on a $2 million place. That's a much bigger dollar value. I make $100,000, whereas someone gets 5% on a $500K house, they make $25,000. So the $2 million property, even if the percentage growth is smaller, the dollar value can be a lot larger. So that's something to consider, is that you've got to balance the growth rates. Yeah, you might get a 20% growth rate, but if you've not got enough exposure or what's called economies of scale in your property portfolio, you're not getting that compounding return on a bigger dollar or asset base. Another interesting thing to look at is these residential vacancy rates published by SQM Research around the Brisbane market. Because it's all well and good buying with good growth potential, but you want to make sure that the property you're buying is going to be rented out as well. So this graph shows some vacancy rates across Brisbane, across 2005 out till 2025. Now, an equilibrium in the rental market is somewhere considered around that 3% mark. So you can see there, where that blue line is, in 2016 to 2019, that there was a period where renters had a pretty good say in what was going on in the rental market. But any other time between 2005 and 2025, there's been an undersupply of rental properties in the Brisbane market. You can see we're sitting around that 1% mark at this point in time, which is super low. Now, there is a bit of a trajectory upwards. You can see that trajectory upwards there, but it's not racing anytime soon unless we get new stock to market, which is very unlikely. Building is so slow here in Australia at this point in time and so expensive. I know about that, finishing off our raise and build project, ridiculous amount of money just to build a home. So looking at the data, looking at from a growth side and a yield side, you're pretty protected in terms of what the data is showing around vacancy rates and around price growth potential here in Southeast Queensland. On top of all that, it's important to chat about sentiment. What is the thoughts of people on the ground buying homes, whether that's their own home or an investment property? What are we seeing? What are my staff seeing when we're going to open homes, when we're chatting with agents? What's the start of 2025 looking like? I think the chatter on the ground that we've seen to start off this year is what's going to happen with interest rates. I think there's going to be extra fuel to the fire if rates do get cut. Now, they might only cut them 0.25% to begin with, but it's more of an indication of where Australia's economy might be going, and there might be serviceability coming back with people's mortgage brokers and banks. Now, if you want to have a chat with my mortgage broker, there's a link in the description below. Have a chat with Nevada and the team at Cube Home Loans because they've helped Emily and I grow our property portfolio from around that $5 million to $8 million at this point in time. And the reason we were able to do that was because they were able to give us access to serviceability, access to the right banks and lenders at the right point in time, and still keep those interest rates sharp. So moving forward in terms of Southeast Queensland, the Olympic Games is on the horizon at 2032. The casino's just opening up. The walkway bridge has just opened up here in Brisbane as well, which is a massive change for Brisbane's inner city lifestyle. There's a lot of swell on the ground around interest rates and what's happening. There's still affordable houses here in Southeast Queensland where you can buy within 30, 40 kilometres of the city and buy a good quality property in an established area for less than $1 million. So for me, the fundamentals still all look good. Now, you need to take everything I say with a grain of salt because I do have my own property portfolio here in Brisbane, and I am a Brisbane expert. I'm a Brisbane buyer's agent who buys every day in the Brisbane market. And so if you are looking to buy in Brisbane and you do want to sit down and have a chat with myself, head over to purposeproperty.com.au to book in a free strategy session. And if you're looking to buy anywhere across Australia and you want some help to give yourself the knowledge, skills, and experience to grow a multi-million dollar property portfolio, you can pick up our course. It's called Invest with Purpose, and it takes you step by step through building a multi-million dollar property portfolio and exactly how Emily and I did it. So head over to purposeproperty.com.au and click on course if you're interested in that. I'd love to hear your thoughts. What do you think is going to happen in terms of the Brisbane market moving forward? Is it still primed for some growth over the next 3, 5, 7 years? Or do you think Brisbane has run out of legs in terms of growth moving forward? I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments below, and click this video over here because YouTube really thinks you'll like that one. So must be the right one to watch. All right. See you in the next one. Peace.